Hey there, and welcome back to the Savvy Painter podcast. I am your host, Antrice Wood, and we are continuing the series on the C.R.E.A.T.E spiral, which is a growth path for artists, a way of understanding your creative process that actually accounts for the real emotions, cycles, and struggles that we face as artists. So if you haven't been listening along for the past couple episodes, this is something that I have been developing behind the scenes, and I am using the word create as an acronym. So we have curiosity, resistance, exploration, alignment, trust, and expansion. This is a 6-part series, and so this is episode number 5. If you haven't heard the other episodes, that's totally fine. You can go back and listen to them later if you want. But today we are talking about trust, specifically about trusting yourself and building that trust. So if you have ever painted something and then immediately asked 5 people what they thought about it, if you felt paralyzed choosing a direction, terrified of picking the wrong way of doing something, or if you have found yourself maybe bouncing between tutorials or feedback, hoping that somebody else will tell you what to do, this episode is for you. When we're early in our art journey, we need guidance, but as we grow, something else becomes much more important, and that is learning to trust our own voice, learning to recognize it, knowing what it is, and having trust in it. It doesn't mean, though, that you will never doubt again. It means that the doubt doesn't get to drive the bus anymore. So I wanted to put this concept of trusting your own voice into context, because this is something that, I think it's really important to understand this, because we have so many ideas of what we should do as artists, what's okay, what's not okay. And the context I want to give this is we learn by emulating others. And that's just how we are as human beings. That's one of the primary ways that human beings learn. And actually, I would say it's the primary way that animals learn too. So we're in really good company. As we emulate others, we naturally seek validation for what we're doing. It's that idea of checking in that we are within the range of doing that thing, whatever that thing is, as intended. So I'm going to use the very familiar example of a baby learning to walk. Babies learn to walk through trial and error and by falling on their little butts often and getting back up again. And as they learn to crawl, then walk, then run, they do tons of face plants. They get back up, fall down, face plant, all of that. And when they do, they look to their caregiver for clues as to how they should emotionally respond to falling. I'm assuming, of course, that they're not seriously injured and it's just a normal little faceplant by a baby. So this impulse to seek validations from others is hardwired, and it has its benefits. It's basically how we learn the rules of whatever society that we live in. We learn to paint by looking at other artists, and a lot of us learned, at least in part, by copying master paintings. And it's a super effective way to learn how to paint. We look to how other people before us have done it, or how other contemporary artists have done it. You've probably taken workshops or studied with other artists, and during that workshop, you're likely to be copying that artist's way of painting, or at least parts of it. Certain skills, certain mannerisms, certain ways that they mix colors, certain way that they use the brush. That's why you're taking, presumably, that's why you're taking the workshop from that artist, because there were specific things that you want to learn from them. Eventually, though, through years of studying, we start to create our own stew of knowledge. We kind of curate what we've been offered, leaving some things out and focusing our attention on others. And what emerges combines with your own vision, your own experiences. And by your own experiences, I mean your life experiences and all the skills that you've acquired over your study of art. All of that comes together as your voice. But we struggle with it as artists. We really, really struggle with this. And the reason why is because most of us were trained to look outside of ourselves for approval. In schools, we're mostly taught that there is one right answer And afterwards, in the workplace, we're typically looking for the most efficient way of doing something, AKA, again, one way to do it. And also in the workplace, you're typically working for someone else. So, of course, you're going to do things the way that that company trains you to do them. It's part of their system, and they obviously are going to engineer that system for a single, repeatable, trainable method. And again, typically that leans towards one right way to do something, or a very specific, one specific outcome that is kind of predetermined. So again, that kind of reinforces this idea that there's one right way that another person or a team decides is the right way. So you look to them like, am I doing this right? So, I mean, you can see with all of that, of course, we have a tendency to look for others for approval. Part of it is just hardwired as a species, as humans. We need that to survive. And part of it is conditioning through schools and workplaces, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously we have this habit of looking around and saying, is this good enough? Do you like it? Did I do it right? Is this okay? Am I okay? But here's the problem. When you never develop internal trust, you always are going to feel a little bit uncertain, even when your work is strong. And you end up in a endless cycle of second guessing. And that leads to creative burnout. It's exhausting. So, a key skill to learn is self trust. So, here's an example of what that can look like and how you can shape things so that it's easier for you to develop it. First thing you're going to do is decide. You're going to start making decisions, because once you start making decisions, you start to filter everything down into something that is more tangible. So, for example, decide what you like in your paintings, what you don't like, and what you want more of, which another way of saying that is skill building. Just by doing that, you create a filter and you have made a decision, you have made a declaration. To oversimplify it, what you're doing here is you're saying to yourself, I like this, I don't like that. And I would even actually encourage you to say it out loud to yourself. This is what I like in my paintings. I want more of that. And I don't like this in my paintings. And what we're talking about here are the components of paintings. I want to be really, really clear about this. I want you to be specific when you do this, right? I like activity in my paintings. I like lots of saturated color, as an example, right? Or I don't like the feeling of busyness. I like a sense of calm. I like large amounts of silence in the work. I like subdued texture. That might be another thing that you decide that you liked, right? And I don't like texture that looks like a pattern, right? So you're not moralizing any of these things. You're not judging them, other than this is what I like in my paintings. And that gives you something very specific to work with. So I want to make this really, really clear. Okay. To be clear, this is not a secret way to berate yourself even more for your perceived faults. When you do this repeatedly and over an extended period of time, you really get to know your voice, and you reaffirm that it's okay to have your own likes and dislikes in a painting. It's the beginning of you learning to trust your own aesthetic. You identify where you need to build skills, right? So I like this part of the painting because the way the colors vibrate off each other, as an example. I like this part of the painting because of the way the colors vibrate off of each other and how that neutral gray really makes that saturated purple pop. I want more of that in my painting. So you can see how very specific I'm being in that. Like, I like this because of X, Y, and Z. And also, it's something that I want to accentuate. I want even more of that in my painting. So now I have a very specific thing that I'm aiming for in my work. And if I notice that I am lacking in a skill, now I know exactly what skill I need help with. So it narrows down who I ask and what I ask about. Notice what it's not doing. Okay. what it's not doing is generalizing the need for a complete overhaul on my painting skills. It is not saying I need to learn how to do everything better, and the downward spiral into overwhelm and discouragement that really typically creates. In terms of self trust, what you are doing is you are showing yourself that you can protect and guide your own development. You have kind of planted a flag with those decisions that you make, and you have said, this is what I'm going for. And you're acting as a guide for yourself. And when you do that repeatedly, and when you show yourself that you can be consistent and that you are on your own team, you don't throw yourself under the bus because your painting didn't please everyone under the sun. In other words, you show yourself that you can be trusted. You show yourself that you are trustworthy. Trust isn't something that magically appears once you get good enough. It's something that you build. It is a skill that you can develop, especially in the moments when you don't feel 100% sure. Oftentimes, we think that trust is about certainty. It's about knowing exactly what the answer is and should be and blah, blah, blah. But in reality, trust is about resilience. It's about knowing that I can make choices. I can stand by my choices. I can handle the results of my choices, even if they're not perfect, because there, of course, are going to be times when they're not perfect. And again, you don't throw yourself under the bus for that. You simply assess it. This is a skill. Just like value, just like composition, just like color mixing, just like drawing, any part of what we do as a painter, this skill of trusting yourself is something that you can learn. And you don't need to feel until you're quote unquote ready to build trust. You build it by showing up for yourself over and over and over again. It's very similar how you learn to trust other people, right? You trust people because they repeatedly do the thing that they say that they're going to do, that they show these qualities to you. So you're going to start to do that for yourself. And when you do that, the upward spiral of trust begins. The more that you do it in all of the areas, the harder you trust yourself. Okay. So in this create spiral, trust comes after alignment. It's the phase where you know who you are as an artist, or at least you have a suspicion, because again, another thing that I really want to emphasize is this is a spiral. So you move through it. It's not like you get to the step of curiosity and then you complete that, check that, and you never go back to it, or that you are in a state of resistance, you move through that and then you never come back, right? So it is a spiral that all of it feeds off of each other, and you learn to build and build and build and build and build. So with trust, I put it after alignment because you start to have this sense of who you are, that it doesn't matter if it's just like a vaporous sense and you're kind of like, I think that might be it, or if you are kind of locked in of this is who I am as a painter. And by the way, regardless, you're allowed to change your mind, and you will, because you will evolve and you will learn more, and your thoughts and your opinions and the information that you have will change. So of course you will shift with that, I hope. Right? Otherwise you're going to be painting the same paintings over and over again forever. But this is where you are learning how to move with that knowledge that you have acquired, instead of fighting it. So inside Growth Studio, I spent a lot of time helping artists to stay in the trust. It's kind of like, first thing you have to learn is to trust the trust, which is very meta, I know, but it's true. We do. Because it's not about never needing support. Learning to trust yourself doesn't mean that you never need anyone else again, ever, or that you never are going to seek another opinion. It's about knowing when to listen to others and when to listen to yourself. Right? So that's like, it's another way of saying, like, you learn how to filter for what it is that is going to truly help you. So if this resonates with you, I want you to try this. Start small. Okay. So I'm always going to tell you, start small. To give you a couple of ideas, you can pick just one thing this week and decide without crowdsourcing your opinions, right? So pick one thing, just one, and decide what you think you should do with that decision. And allow yourself to just go with that decision without crowdsourcing. Another option is to just choose a color or choose a title or choose a price, choose a direction, and then take steps towards it. Trust it, follow through, and then just see what happens, because you can always assess and you can always revise, right? Again, remember, it's not about certainty. It's not about locking in and like, I've made this decision and then that's that, and I'm going to hold to this for the rest of your life. You are growing as an artist. Another option is to just finish something. Even if it's not perfect, just finish it. Let yourself say that this is enough and I don't need to change it. That one, the idea of just finishing something, even if it's not perfect, and letting yourself say to yourself, this is enough, I don't need to change it, I think is really helpful for building the skill of trusting yourself, obviously, but I think it's especially good for people who lean towards perfectionism. Hi, that's me. Because the more that you do that, the stronger your inner artist becomes. And every time that you choose yourself over fear, that voice gets louder. So when you choose yourself over fear, it's basically saying, like, I'm going to go with my instinct. I'm going to go with gut. I'm not going to avoid this feeling of fear that I just don't want to feel. I'm going to lean into it and know that I can feel fear. I can feel uncertainty. I can feel uncomfortable, and I'm still okay. I can still choose myself over this, right? The more you practice trusting yourself, the stronger that muscle of trust gets, and the less time that you will spend spinning in self-doubt. Okay, so that's what I have for you this week. As always, I want to let you know that inside Growth Studio, this is where so many artists are leveling up all of these skills, not because they're suddenly more talented or they suddenly, like, light switch goes on and they suddenly have all the answers, but because they finally learn to trust what's already there inside of themselves. So if you are tired of outsourcing your authority, if you're ready to make work that feels like it's truly yours, and if you want to stop doubting every single brushstroke that you make, okay, maybe you don't do every single one, but you know what I mean. This is your next phase, and you don't have to figure it out alone. Thank you so much for listening. Next time, we're going to wrap up this series with the expansion phase and what happens when you're ready to grow, to be seen, and to show up even bigger. See you then. Talk soon.